So yesterday we had the final report released from John Durham concerning his investigations into the origins of the 2016 investigation by the FBI and other aspects of U.S. intelligence into Donald Trump concerning his alleged ties to Russia, being a Russian asset and a puppet for Vladimir Putin. That was the claim made about Donald Trump back in 2016. Now, I've always been skeptical of this Durham investigation. I had very low expectations based off of past precedent. The government usually protects itself, so certainly my expectations were not very high. Now, that being said, this report does confirm that there was no legitimate reason for the FBI to have opened up their investigation called Crossfire Hurricane. That is indisputable. It should never have happened. The FISA warrants, they should never have happened. So anyone on the left saying that there was a reason to investigate Trump in 2016, that simply is not true. Now, why did they investigate Donald Trump? Well, there are three main reasons. One, to impact the 2016 election. I've said for years, the biggest election meddlers is not Russia or China or anyone else. It is U.S. intelligence. And that's what U.S. intelligence was doing in 2016, trying to impact the 2016 election. Second, if for some reason Trump got elected and they were not expecting this, they wanted to cripple him so that he could not get very much done. And certainly in the first 2 years of his presidency with the Mueller investigation, he was essentially handcuffed. His ability to pass certain legislation, talk to Putin to try to settle international matters was very limited. Trump said himself that he lost 2 years of his presidency and he deserved to get 2 years back. And the third reason why they did this investigation was to set up a future confrontation with Russia. The neocons, they're always planning in advance. They knew in the future that they wanted to have some sort of conflict, which of course is what we're seeing right now with this proxy war in Ukraine. Now, what do me and you want to know? Who is going to pay for the fact that this investigation was nonsense? Who's actually going to go to jail? And this is where this report gets interesting, because early on in the report, it explains their process, their thinking as far as going after certain people and making prosecutions. So I want to read this section here because it's very interesting. And in some parts, it is contradictory. So in the report, it says this: conducting this investigation required us to consider U.S. criminal laws, the constitutional protections our system provides to individuals, and the high burden placed on the government to prove every element of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt. Moreover, the law does not always make a person's bad judgment, even horribly bad judgment, standing alone a crime. Nor does the law criminalize all unseemly or unethical conduct that political campaigns might undertake for tactical advantage, absent a violation of a particular federal criminal statute. Finally, in almost all cases, the government is required to prove a person's actual criminal intent, not mere negligence or recklessness, before that person's fellow citizens can lawfully find him or her guilty of a crime. The office's adherence to these principles explains in numerous instances why conduct deserving of censure or disciplinary action did not lead the office to seek criminal charges. So you can have bad judgment, horribly bad judgment, negligence, recklessness, but that's not always a crime. How very convenient. But it goes on and says this as well. And this is actually even more interesting. We knew about the fact that they would use the excuse of negligence for why this happened and that it wasn't a crime, just some idiots doing what they're doing, right? It says here, there are also reasons why, in examining politically charged and high-profile issues such as these, the office must exercise and has exercised special care. First, juries can bring strongly held views to the courtroom in criminal trials involving political subject matters, and those views can, in turn, affect the likelihood of obtaining a conviction separate and apart from the strength of the actual evidence, and despite a court's best efforts to impanel a fair and impartial jury. Remember, we had Sussman, the lawyer who lied to the FBI. It was a slam dunk case, and he was acquitted by a Washington, D.C. jury. So they're essentially saying here, well, we could have the evidence, but the jury's going to be political, and they're not going to convict certain people. And this is the problem we have in D.C. and New York. If you're a Democrat, you're acquitted. If you're Donald Trump or anybody adjacent to him, you are going down in flames. So you cannot have a fair trial in Washington, D.C. or New York. And then it goes on to say, second, even when a prosecutors believe that they can obtain a conviction, there are some instances in which it may not be advisable to expend government time and resources on a criminal prosecution, particularly where it would create the appearance, even if unfounded, that the government is seeking to criminalize the behavior of political opponents or punish the activities of a specific political party or campaign. So hold on here. It's saying that even if they have the evidence, they can convict somebody. If there's even the appearance, even if it's unfounded, that it could be political, maybe we're not going to do it. Are you kidding me? Look at Donald Trump. Everything they've done to him has been political, and that has not stopped them from going after him. So I see that line there. I'm like, what the heck? And then it goes on to say, at the same time, prosecutors should not shy away from pursuing justifiable cases solely due to the popularity of the defendant or the controversial nature of the government's case. What? Is that not a complete contradiction here? It just said earlier, well, even if you can get a conviction, you shouldn't prosecute that if it looks political. But at the same time, prosecutors should not shy away solely because of the popularity of the defendant. What? So I read that and I laugh because I think the last part there is basically saying, trying to explain why Donald Trump is being pursued right now. So the whole thing there is nonsensical. It's ridiculous and it's contradictory. And it's quite frankly, a joke that they actually wrote these three sentences together here, and no one said, "Who? That looks ridiculous and stupid." So this is why they're not prosecuting anyone in this case, because corrupt juries. It could look political, and even if you can get a conviction, well, we got to be careful here. So a bunch of nonsense. But now, having read that, what's the bigger issue here? And this is really the thing to focus on. What essentially is going on here with this case or this report is that there is no one person per se to prosecute, because what we really have here is a conspiracy that involves pretty much the entire government. So what are you going to do? Do you go RICO on the government and charge the government with conspiracy? Well, you can't do that. Or you could, I guess, but no one's going to do it. Certainly not John Durham. The DOJ is not going to prosecute itself, prosecute the FBI, the CIA. So it's really what the report is saying, even if it's not trying to say it, is that we can't go after anybody because it's the whole enchilada. So we're just going to step away and say people were being reckless, they were showing bad judgment, and that's all we're going to say there. And that's really the bigger problem here for us conservatives on the right, is that we're not, the system is so stacked against us. In order for us to make any changes, we have to win elections if we can, if we get a fair elections. We need actual patriots on the inside of the government, in the FBI, the DOJ, to actually fight back against it. As long as they control the system, they are not going to go after it themselves. So it's a long road ahead to actually making real change to go after some of these scumbags. And unfortunately, our current people, our Congress, our McCarthy's, unfortunately, our Jim Jordans, in my opinion, even though I don't dislike them, they do a lot of beating of the desks, a lot of grandstanding, a lot of pointing, a lot of, nothing happens. They don't go after anybody in any way that's going to make the Democrats or the establishment nervous. And that's why the Democrats and the establishment will keep marching on against Trump. And they're, they have the case in Georgia. They have the other special counsel looking into Trump. So, and they will get convictions because there's nothing to stop them. And the juries, again, are so tainted against Trump that if they brought a case against Trump for killing Jesus because he made a time machine, went back to 2,000 years and did it, and went to court with that, Donald Trump would be convicted. That's how insane our juries are right now in Washington, D.C., in New York, and unfortunately probably in Georgia as well. Now, there's one last part of this thing I want to point out, which report. It said that in the course of the investigation, they subpoenaed people and interviewed people, but it says here some individuals who, in our view, had important and relevant information about the topics under investigation refused to be interviewed or otherwise cooperate with the office. So there is more information out there that the office simply could not get. And my guess is what they're going to say as well is, well, we could have prosecuted somebody, but we just couldn't get the people to cooperate in these interviews, and we didn't have all the information we could have gotten. So that was also preventing us from having any prosecutions in this case. So that's another way they're going to avoid blame for not having one person convicted, arrested, and taken to jail. So this Durham report, it does confirm that we know the 2016 Trump investigation was BS, but it's a semi-cover-up in the sense that it will not go after anybody. And if no one ever pays, what is the incentive for people to not keep doing this? What incentive of the FBI, if you're the director or the CIA director, what incentive is there for you to actually follow the law and not be corrupt? There's no incentive. Nothing happens to you. Okay, so maybe you get fired, right? Trump fired Comey, and then Brennan went out later, and McCabe. What happens next? Well, they get jobs with MSNBC as contributors. They're on the board of some local, or not local, but some military, company, arms manufacturer, and they get an actual bump in their salary. So they don't pay. They get rewarded for the corruption. And until they actually pay, they're not going to stop. And unfortunately, right now, we don't really have anything in place to make them pay. And which is why, unfortunately, they're going to keep marching forward, doing what they're doing. And man, they're getting brazen. I mean, there are no norms that they won't just, shatter. They will do anything because there's no threat to them. And if any patriots start to make a little bit of noise protesting, they got January 6th. Ooh, you're trying to overthrow the government. You're committing treason or insurrection. So January 6th was a good way to prevent patriots and people who wanted to push back against the government from standing up in the future. And I think that's a big part of the reason they went after Jan 6 so hard, was to prevent future protest and not attacks on the government, but from people coming out and really holding their feet to the fire. Now, people are scared because they don't want to end up under in a DC jail on the ground for 2 years, like some of these people in solitary confinement, going crazy. So government has made it hard for people on the right to stand up and protest and speak out against them, unfortunately. So we have a lot of work to do in the future. And hopefully, Trump 2024, he's a front runner. It was great what we did on CNN, but there are a lot of hurdles in front of us. So let's prepare for that. It's going to be tough, but we have no other choice but to push forward and fight. Well, that's it for now. If you are new to my channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.